Module 2 explains injector and fuel system operation and demonstrates test and service procedures. Let's take a look at how the Etec injector works. Fuel flows from the circulation pump to the injector whenever the engine is running. Most of the fuel flows through the injector, cooling the coils, and returns to the vapor separator. The injector has a pair of permanent magnets which create a magnetic field within the housing. A coil of wire is wound around a movable bobbin. When electricity flows through the coil, it creates a second magnetic field. The two fields interact, causing the bobbin to move. As the bobbin moves toward the nozzle, it pushes the plunger toward the injector nozzle. A ball inside seals the plunger, turning it into a piston and pressurizing the fuel in the nozzle. When the pressure is high enough to overcome the spring in the nozzle, the pintle opens, spraying fuel into the cylinder under high pressure. This graph shows the electrical pulses to the injector. On 40 horsepower models and above, after the first injection pulse, the EMM sends a second pulse of the opposite polarity to the injector. When electrical current flows in the opposite direction, the magnetic field also reverses. This helps decelerate the bobbin and plunger. Then the coil begins to move in the opposite direction. A third pulse, also reverse, stabilizes the injector at its starting point, ready for the next injection. At idle and low speed, the second pulse is a forward pulse that occurs later to softly seat the coil, reducing the audible click from the injectors. On 30 horsepower models and below, the injector receives only a single forward pulse. The other pulses aren't necessary because the injector is delivering less fuel. The amount of fuel delivered is determined by the duration of the first electrical pulse. A longer pulse provides more fuel from the injector. The EMM controls the duration and timing of the pulse based on RPM, throttle position, air and water temperature, and barometric pressure. Etec injectors come in 3 different versions. The original injector has a different plunger arrangement and was used on 2004 through 2007 models. Since 2008, all models 40 horsepower and above have used the BIP injector, which stands for ball-in plunger. It features different nozzle angles and an improved method for compensating for the injector's individual flow characteristics. The two versions are not interchangeable and are easily identified by the housing. 30 horsepower models and below have their own injector that works the same way as the BIP injector. The internal components are slightly smaller and the case is different because it connects directly with the vapor separator. Etec models feature a sealed fuel system, which minimizes evaporative emissions and helps prevent the fuel from degrading and forming varnish. The lift pump draws fuel from the fuel tank. It pumps the fuel through an engine-mounted fuel filter. The fuel moves on to the vapor separator, a water-cooled fuel reservoir that supplies fuel to the electric circulation pump. The circulation pump distributes the fuel under pressure to the fuel rails and injectors. The warm fuel that flows through the injectors returns to the vapor separator. On 30 horsepower models and below, the fuel injectors are attached directly to the vapor separator, eliminating the fuel rails. Pressure in the fuel rails is maintained by a pressure regulator inside the vapor separator. The fuel return fitting contains a serviceable filter. On early Etec models, it points out of the fitting. On later models, it points into the fitting. Check this filter if an engine has abnormally high fuel pressure. Water passages in the vapor separator cool the incoming fuel before it is pumped back to the injectors. Any excess vapor in the separator is vented to the intake manifold and burned. On V models, the electric fuel circulation pump runs for 10 seconds each time the key is turned on. This is not true on inline models. The outboard must be cranking or running for the circulation pump to run.